Namaskar, Sat Sri Akal, Vanakkam. A very warm welcome to the special webinar by Edelweiss on MSMEs and new heroes in the new normal. We have gathered here virtually today to celebrate the spirit of entrepreneurship on the occasion of International MSME Day. The United Nations General Assembly designated June 27 as the International MSME Day to raise public awareness about the contribution of MSMEs to sustainable development. The day is celebrated to salute the spirit of entrepreneurs for their immense contribution in driving the economy, not just in India, but all over the world. Celebrating the spirit of entrepreneurship has never been more pertinent than now. Yes, you heard it right. Amidst all this gloom and doom environment, we are indeed talking about celebrating the spirit of entrepreneurship because this webinar is unique. Today, we have with us a special panel of guests and speakers who are not only thought leaders, but practitioners with great insights and experiences about rebuilding in the new normal. So ladies and gentlemen, I promise you that today is not just going to be a session of nice to hear gyan and insights, but over the next 1 hour, we'll actually try to chart out a blueprint of actionable insights for our MSMEs to thrive in the new normal. And to tell us more about what we will define the new heroes in the new normal, we have a keynote address from a man who is an institution in himself. He's a first-generation entrepreneur who has successfully built one of India's most respected and diversified financial institutions. He's a veteran of many a crisis and an avid marathoner in spirit as well as in practice. The man needs no introduction. He's none other than Rashesh Shah, the chairman and CEO of Edelweiss Group. I'll now invite Rashesh for his keynote address before we kick off the panel discussion. Rashesh, over to you.
Thank you, Anish, and very good afternoon to all of you. It's really very heartening to see the huge response that has been there for this conference, and MSME has always been a very important part of Edelweiss as a whole, also even in the early days and all. And when I recount a few examples about how we have grown working with entrepreneurs in India at all stages of their evolution, we do always have a soft corner for MSMEs and entrepreneurs in India. And it's great to see the kind of interest, the kind of participation all of you have. So from the bottom of our hearts, thank you, all of you, for being here with us for this day. Obviously, goes without saying, today is an important day to celebrate the spirit of MSMEs, but also a day where we should look inwards and say what we can do to make this part of our economy, the most important part of our economy, even more stronger and can capitalize on the growth opportunities that are there in India. So as we all know, I think it is almost become a cliche to say that MSMEs are very important, and everybody you talk to, from the Prime Minister onwards to whether it's the MSME Minister or the Finance Minister or the Reserve Bank of India or the banks, everybody has underscored the importance of this particular sector and especially this part of the economy. And when we say MSME, it encompasses a large part. It goes from the medium to small to micro enterprises, and all kinds of companies are in this group. The good news and the bad news is that there are a lot of issues that MSMEs are facing, but the good news is that these are fairly similar. I think all of us are in a way very similar to each other. Large companies, small companies, they're all fairly similar. But what is happening in the last 4-5 years for the MSME sector is there is a transformation phase that is going on, and especially with the formalization, with GST, with technology, with the India stack, all of that, and the financial technology that is being deployed for the MSME sector. So there are good and bad of that, and I think this transformation is what is putting a lot of pressure on MSMEs, but also opening up a lot of opportunities for MSMEs. In a way, this is not very unsimilar to what India went through after 1991, where the larger companies in India, the corporates in India got exposed to international competition. They had to learn the new ways of working, And I remember about 91 till at least 2004, the next 12, 13 years was a phase of adaptation for India Inc., for the corporate India. And a few out of them became stronger, few managed it, and a few others struggled to adapt to the new environment. And I think last 4, 5 years, since 2013-14, there has been a similar transformation phase going on for MSMEs, whether it was post demonetization, GST, this entire technology-led banking that is all happening. A lot of this from informal to formal practices, all of them are putting a lot of pressure on MSMEs to adapt and grow, but also giving them a lot more opportunities. And again, it's part of the economic growth that unfortunately, whether you are a large company or a small company, you have to constantly adapt, be agile to grow. And we see that with large companies, we see that in small companies. And the rules of the game are the same for all of us, except MSME is a large sector and a very heterogeneous sector. There are all kinds of companies in MSMEs, and we also see that from companies with 5 or 10 employees to companies with thousands of employees also. So I think it's a large sector with its own diverse set of issues, but very similar things that we need to do to harness the power of this sector. And all of you, I mean, the MSME entrepreneurs who are on this call are the warriors out there. We should all give you a big thank you for having, sustained this, for creating jobs, for creating the ecosystem for the Indian economy, because over the last few years, we can all empathize the struggles you have put through. And being an entrepreneur in India is a struggle, whether you're large or small, it's a struggle, but that is what entrepreneurs are made of. And outside of USA, India has the largest pool of entrepreneurs. We have seen that a lot of Indian entrepreneurs, when they've gone abroad also, they've done very well. And Indian entrepreneurs are the heart of Indian economy. And post 1991, the real spirit of Indian entrepreneurs, whether it's startup companies, whether it's small and medium enterprises, whether it's mid-sized companies, mid-sized corporates, large corporates, the one common feature in that has been the spirit of Indian entrepreneurs and the spirit of that ability to say we can do it, we are agile. We obviously hope that the ecosystem becomes easier, the ease of doing business becomes friendlier, the government rules and regulations become easier, the ambiguity comes down, the constant change comes down. We all hope for that. But in spite of that, what we've been able to build in India over the last 30 years has been marvelous. And this would not have been possible without this huge spirit of entrepreneurship that we have harnessed. So that is, I think, the large part of the of what we are going to celebrate today. What we also want to grapple with is where India is going, where MSMEs are going, and maybe I'll talk a little bit about Edelweiss and what we are trying to do. So I think India has been a very unique phase in the last 20, 30 years, and we started Edelweiss 25 years ago. And I always say that we are 25 years old and we are 100 quarters old, because every quarter seems like one full year in India because there is so much change. India is growing fast. In these 25 years, the Indian economy has grown from 300 billion to 3 trillion US dollars. We have grown more than 10 times in US dollar terms, and we have grown more than 14, 15 times in Indian rupee terms. So whether our banking industry has grown 25 times from 1995 to now, the size of the banking industry in India has grown by 25 times. So it's been a huge growth phase, but a constant churn. There has been a constant change that is happening. And India being a country which is growing and developing and putting our institutions in place, putting our systems in place, there is a constant change that happens. So in the short term, the change can be very overwhelming, can really grip us because there is a need to adapt all the time. The marketplace is changing, urbanization is going on, the needs of the consumer are changing. Like we in financial services are also realizing that we are moving from a very product-centric industry to a very customer-centric industry, and I'll speak about that a little bit. So given all the changes that are happening, technology changing the rules of the game, and COVID has not been a game changer, it has been a trend accelerator. Because every trend, whether it's technology, whether it's formalization, whether it's this work from home, organization structures becoming more flat, all this has been accelerated because of COVID. They have not changed because of COVID, they've been accelerated. So I think given this change that is going on all around us, in India, we need to constantly adapt. And India in short term is always very chaotic and very uncertain and change all the time. But in long term, it's always appears as a great story. So when I look at India over 25 years, it's been a transformation of our economy. The amount of opportunities that have opened up to all of us has been outstanding. But over the same 25 years, if I look at it over 100 quarters or over month on month basis, there is change. There'll be India Pakistan, there'll be India China issues going on, there'll be Asian financial crisis, there'll be technology bubble, there'll be drought, there'll be demonetization, there'll be GST. There is constant change that is there. So India in short term, friends, is always going to be volatile, chaotic, uncertain, but in long term will always be a great opportunity. And we have to constantly remind ourselves that we need to balance. We need to balance the short term grappling that we have to do, but also we have to balance the long term opportunity that we see. And in Edelweiss, we call it having a bifocal vision, being able to appreciate both the short term challenges and the long term opportunity. If you look at only the short term challenges, you'll get overwhelmed by that and you lose heart, and your emotional capital and financial capital will get converge only to grapple with that, and you will not be able to see the larger opportunity. If you see only the larger opportunity and not really see the short-term challenges, you will stumble, you will fumble, and hence you need to manage both. You need to keep one eye. The choice we have is whether we keep the right eye on one and the left eye on others. This is a choice we have as entrepreneurs, but we have to keep one eye on the short-term challenges and the other eye on the long-term opportunity. And today is a good day. I think we are in the middle of COVID. We are in the middle of change. It's been an unprecedented crisis. It's been a humanitarian crisis. It's been a global crisis. But along with that, it's also been an economic crisis, because in order to combat COVID, we have had to take a lot of economic cost. And what we have seen in the last 3-4 months has been unprecedented. I don't think any one of us in our lives would have encountered a situation like this. Having said that, I think what I've seen is the fear and the panic in March and April was the highest. Partly because, friends, we were unprepared for that. Partly because came as a shock. I would have never thought that we would be under lockdown for 3 weeks, leave alone 3 months. So it was so shocking that I think March and April went in shock. And April was one of the shock. In April, India, we had zero car sales. There was zero car sales in the whole month of April in a country like India. And that is unprecedented. And we saw that almost in all other parts of the businesses that we had to grapple, and everything came to a standstill. There is a sense of optimism. There is a sense of green shoots coming back in the last couple of months, especially from the middle of May. The mood has changed, partly because interest rates have come down, liquidity has been infused, though I don't think that liquidity has got transformed into credit flow. But government also came out with a few schemes for MSMEs, especially the 3 lakh crore Atmanirbhar Bharat scheme for MSMEs has been marvelously designed. We also hope it is marvelously executed also via the banks and NBFCs and all. But it's a good scheme, and I think it will provide a lot of liquidity support and credit support to the MSMEs. So post 15th of May, the mood has started improving. We hope that this continues to improve and build upon itself. The momentum is positive. So if I look at from 15 March to 15th May, those 2 months were very depressing. They were shocking. There was a sense of panic. There was a sense of, despair that was there. But post May, I think the last 1 month especially has been a renewed sense of optimism. And one part of optimism also comes from the fact that we all believe that we may not see what we saw in April again. I think April 2020 should not recur again to any of us, to anybody in the world. There should be no repeat of April 2020. It was a most shocking month for everybody, businessmen, individuals, everybody. And if we have survived April 2020, then there is a feeling that we can survive what is going to come, because what is going to come is not going to be as bad as April 2020. So there is a renewed sense of saying that we have survived. There is a sense of relief that is there. We are still not out of the woods. I think the economic cost of COVID is going to, linger on for at least the next 2-3 quarters. And we, at least in Edelweiss, believe that March 21 is where we might be able to draw the line in the sand and said now COVID is behind us. The impact of COVID is behind us, and we can now go forward, and we have come back to some sort of normalcy. It's 3-4 quarters away, and those 3-4 quarters are going to be easier than the last quarter was. The April, May, June quarter was as tiring, as much of a struggle as it has been for all of us. So maybe, in a sense, keep the fingers crossed. The worst is behind us. Things should improve gradually, but we are not out of the woods. There is a lot of repair work to be done. Part of the repair work is going to be providing credit and liquidity, and we remain committed. I mean, amongst all the other businesses we have, the MSME credit business is the one we feel the most optimistic about, and we want to make sure that we do our job. We provide the last mile to all our deserving customers. One of the good things that our team has done, and I must compliment them, in the last couple of months, one of the biggest effort has been to reach out to MSMEs. The customer outreach has been the most important one, because we in Edelweiss believe that eventually the real differentiation is not your interest rate or the product that you have, because I think, let's admit it, all banks, all NBFCs providing MSME credit are in some way or the other very similar to each other. The way it is, every bank account is the same, every credit card is the same, every mutual fund is the same, every insurance policy is the same. So ultimately, in financial products and financial services, your biggest asset and biggest differentiator is your customer. If you understand the needs of the customer, if you understand what is the right product in the right way at the right price for the customer, you will be able to succeed. And there is no magic crystal ball for that. The only magic crystal ball in that is huge amount of customer engagement, huge amount of reaching out to the customers. And what we have done in the last 2 months makes me very proud, makes me very gratified that we have got much closer to our customers. So we might say, call it social distancing. I think we have been physically distanced, but socially we have come much closer to our customers, especially in the MSME sector. Our team has reached out, understood the needs. There are areas we could help, there are areas we could not help, but we have put in a lot of effort to listen, understand, empathize, and deal with the needs of our customers. And we do believe at Edelweiss, at a deep level, that we can use technology, we can use all the other skill sets we have, but eventually they all have to be a means to an end. And the end is to understand and deliver to the customer needs. So financial services is not about products, it's about customers. And I'm sure today also we will grapple a lot about what are the customer needs emerging in this COVID situation, and where are the challenges, where are the opportunities in that. So friends, having said that, I think India will always challenge us, and there are times India will look like a gone case, a gone opportunity, a gone story. But India has proven a lot of people wrong over the years. Even I remember in March and April, a lot of the foreign investors who are our clients were talking to us, and they were in April saying India is going to be so troubled. There are going to be millions of people who will die. Your healthcare system will get overwhelmed. Yes, we have had trouble. People have died, unfortunately, and all. But I think overall the numbers are still a lot more contained and manageable. And though we are maybe a few weeks away from the peak, we do think that things will come under control. And I think in Mumbai, what we have seen with Dharavi, and the Dharavi was a big, the way a lot of people globally thought about India, a lot of Indians thought about Dharavi, that this is going to be hard to manage. It's so dense, so many people are there. How will you contain it? And we have shown that we have been able to contain COVID spread in Dharavi also, and we've been able to do whatever we can in India. It's not a time to be complacent. It is not a time to feel very comfortable. The next few quarters are going to be uncomfortable, but it is a time to feel optimistic. It is a time to feel opportunistic, and it is a time to engage with each other, get closer to each other, not physically, but socially and emotionally, and work together. And I do think that, as in the earlier crisis, India has come out India will come out of this. We at Edelweiss remain committed. We are a diversified financial services company. We have businesses in insurance, in asset management, wealth management, NBFC, credit, asset reconstruction. And we have seen COVID. COVID in some parts has impacted us and our customers in a big way, like in credit especially has been the biggest impact that has been there. Liquidity has been a big challenge, especially because NBFCs got also disadvantaged because we offered the moratorium to our customers, but we didn't get automatic moratorium from the banks and the bond market where we have to pay the money. And that was a challenge with all NBFCs. We have navigated it. Last 3 months have been very, very challenging. I would say the most challenging phase I would have seen in my life as an entrepreneur over 25 years. But we have gone through that. We have managed it. Our emotional, financial capital all is intact. We are closer to our customers, our employees are energized and all. But it has been a challenge, and I think liquidity should ease off. I think credit flow should also get unclogged as we go along. And we do hope that banks don't have extreme risk aversion. Banks also start taking risk and start going forward because they are the heart of the Indian financial system. And the more the banks are open, the more they are willing to take risk and invest in the economy, the better. They have had their own share of issues with NPAs over the last few years and all. But we do think COVID is a time for reset. So I remain optimistic because COVID is a big crisis, but crisis is also an opportunity. And if you look at India, we have used every crisis as an opportunity. And I remember 1991 when I was just starting my career, it looked like an insurmountable crisis. It looked like a crisis that we will never be able to contain. But that crisis became the biggest opportunity. We reset India, reformed India, and I believe that 2021 will be equal to 1991. We are at that time we had a balance of payment crisis. At this time we have a jobs and growth crisis. And if we can solve that through credit markets, through entrepreneurship, through reforms, so government has to do its bit, entrepreneurs have to do its bit, banks and financial services have to do their bit. But I think if we can do all of that, we do think this can be the great reset point for all of us. And the way we currently talk of India, Indian economy pre-91 and post-91, we will talk of Indian economy pre-COVID and post-COVID. So with that, thank you very much for this opportunity, for being patient, for listening to this. And I do hope that all of you have a great time. We do learn from each other. And thank you for being here. And thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Rashesh, for this wonderful insights. You have set the context right and right for this particular webinar. And I think you touched upon a point that there's a lot of repair work to be done. And I think that's what the panel will deliberate upon, the specific blueprint for our MSMEs to set things right. So thank you so much, Rashesh, for your time. And I'm very glad to tell everyone that we have already clocking over 650 MSMEs and SME ecosystem partners on this call. So it's a lot of people are waiting to hear. I'm sure there's been such wonderful insights that has come from Rashesh. And without much ado now, I'll also introduce you to the panel. So we have got Naveen Chandani with us. Naveen, just wave your hand for the audience so that they can see you. Naveen is a known name in the BFSI industry. He's the MD and CEO of TRIF Highmark, one of the leading credit bureaus in India, and India's first microfinance bureau with the largest database of individual records which support millions of lending decisions every month. With over 2 decades of experience as an eminent business leader, Naveen comes with specialized knowledge and insights on conceptualizing digital strategies in financial services. Before joining TRIF, Naveen had worked with noteworthy brands such as Bank Bazaar, American Express, Visa, Experian, and Dun & Bradstreet. Thank you, Naveen, for gracing this occasion. We have recently, we would have seen a Pune-based molecular diagnostics company, MyLab Discovery Solutions, which made headlines for the first made-in-India COVID-19 test kits in a record time of 6 weeks. The man behind this tremendous achievement is Shailendra Kavde, the Executive Director of MyLab Discovery. Shailendra, thank you for joining us. You've been a very self-motivated professional with in-depth knowledge and understanding of cutting-edge science and technology. Shailendra has got over 15 years of experience in life sciences industries, having worked with companies like Life Technologies and Eppendorf India Limited. Thank you, Shailendra. Now we have got Vikas Dimri with us. Vikas Thank you for joining us. You have over got 20 years of rich banking experience working across multinationals like Standard Chartered and Deutsche Bank. His experience spans the spectrum of retail and SME credit. He's currently the director and head of SME business, trade and working capital for Deutsche, and is responsible for digitalization of SME financing there as well. Most interestingly, he's an adrenaline junkie. He has actually scaled the Mount Everest, and he's also an official Iron Man. So thank you, Vikas, for joining the panel. Our next panelist is Mr. Sunil Shrivastav. He is an industry veteran with close to 4 decades of experience across corporate and retail banking, project finance, and investment banking. Mr. Srivastav retired as the Deputy Managing Director of Corporate Banking in State Bank. He is a senior advisor with World Bank and at Edelweiss. He is a renowned thought leader and writes and speaks regularly on various economic and financial matters. He also serves as independent director on the boards of a few companies here. And last but not the least, I've got Mehrnosh Tata with us. It gives me a great pleasure to introduce him as the next panelist, who is the head of SME of Edelweiss. Mehrnosh is a chartered accountant and a seasoned financial professional with over 2 decades of experience in banking, credit, and SME finance. Mehrnosh started his career with PwC before joining the Citibank in 2000, where he spent over 18 years across functions and products. Having been part of the evolution of the retail lending space in India, Mehrnosh has an in-depth understanding of the opportunities and exceptional growth potential of the MSMEs represent as part of the India growth story. So thank you everyone for being part of this riveting panel. And as you know, before we really talk about how do we get out of this woods and what's the new normal going to look like, let us first understand the extent of the damage. So my first question is to Vikas. As an industry veteran and having an eagle eye on events across the spectrum, Vikas, which are those 2-3 things that have irrevocably changed for our MSMEs due to COVID? What's your view on that?
Thank you, Anish, for having me here, and thanks to the audience for joining in on a Saturday afternoon. A very good afternoon to all of you. After this very powerful keynote address by Rashesh, Anish, I want to borrow a few things from his address. Firstly, he said that that much had changed and was changing prior to March 2020, but that we'll call it as a pre-COVID era. And like Rashesh mentioned, some of this may continue till early 2021. Take a few quarters here and there, maybe to the later part of 2021. That is what we will call the COVID era, and then there will be the post-COVID era, right? But in this period itself, much has already changed for humanity, for nations. We are already seeing it, for communities, for businesses, and more specifically for SMEs. Trade, commerce, supply chains, all of them have already gone through significant change. The structure of business enterprise will definitely change forever. But really, to look into a crystal ball and put my finger into changes that are irreversible is extremely difficult, but I'll hazard a few opinions here. Firstly, there is this definite shift in the consumer behavior. Consumer and buying behavior, I must say. Consumers and businesses have adopted to newer ways of buying or dealing with the sellers in the past 2 to 3 months. Add to this the fear of going out in the last 2-3 months, plus the government lockdown. People are not really very keen to interact with many people in crowded areas and in close personal proximity. I think this will change the way businesses conduct themselves as well as the way consumers conduct themselves. And the pace at which consumers have adopted to this new way of working. This is also something that has surprised us in the last 2-3 months. So it will be imperative to that all SMEs quickly adapt to this shift in the consumer preference and the behavior that is relevant to them, so that they are able to adapt the business models, their selling and buying processes to this new shift in the business model. Secondly, the process of digitalization and automation was already underway. As Rashesh mentioned, this was a process of transformation that had already started. But the pace at which this has moved in the last 2-3 months has clearly surprised us. Uh, this acceleration in adoption of digitalization by not just by consumers but also by businesses, and most of our MSMEs, they are deeply entrenched with their principles. So there is going to be a significant impact in the way they conduct their businesses, not just with their own customers but also with their suppliers. Uh, Together with this shift in consumer behavior and the adoption of digitalization and automation will give MSMEs great benefits in efficiencies, will give them speed to market to be able to deliver the products well. And as long as they keep a very close eye on how the consumers are shifting and they are able to adapt to this quick shift, uh, they will be able to leverage technology and the technology adoption to make best use of this. As Deutsche Bank, we are deeply committed to this segment of MSME. It's integral to our India strategy, and we are watching this space and watching how some of our MSME clients are making this shift and adopting to this new normal. I want to take one, quickly quote one anecdote. This is of a client of ours who has a manufacturing facility near Manesar, fully under lockdown, not permitted to work, the entire manufacturing capacity sitting idle. But they have a lot of employees on their rolls who they didn't want to lay off, and they put these employees to use to start writing into prospective clients, and they pulled out lists and lists from the internet and started calling these clients overseas, different markets, wherever they could reach, and share the products and brochures. And I'm happy to kind of report in this forum that after a couple of months, I got a call from this client and said, he told me that that in these last 2-3 months, the number of prospects that they have generated, they had not generated in the last 10 years, because they were happy doing business with the current set of clients that they had. And they were just too caught up in manufacturing. And because now manufacturing had taken a back seat, they took the advantage of the ability to communicate to clients with the digital tools that they had, and prospect for more clients and build a new client base possibly. Yeah.
Right.
So that to me is a major shift, and this is an irreversible shift, really.
Right, Vikas. I think thank you. You have talked about 2-3 very important points, and that takes me to Shailendra. I know you have a very fascinating story which you wanted to, which we would want you to talk about. But before that, if we just let's go back 3 months into the past. What were the basic challenges that you really faced, and not just you, but also your partners in the ecosystem? What were your problems? If you could just list down before we come to the solutions later, or what you really did. But what were the typical problems that you faced?
We are in the healthcare industry, and specifically my lab was a diagnostic innovation company. So as you all know, life science is little different than the electronics or mechanicals, where you are not very sure about the outcome of the thing. All pharma is sort of blessed by this particular uncertainty, where you are not really sure with the outcome. Basically the problem of this particular ecosystem is that you put in the money, you are investing in the R&D, and then you are not really sure that how the market will take it, as well as which kind of product you are going to come out of this particular R&D. So that was one challenge. Another challenge, of course, the credit lines in India are really thin if you compare with China, where a lot of government support is there, a lot of bank support is there. And if you even compare with US and Europe, wherein again the liquidity is high, the interest rates are quite low. So R&D is really fascinated, and also they have a very beautiful university and corporate junctions, wherein the burden of the research and development is shared by the society, which is not the case in India. So that was the challenge in India. In this scenario, the company which wants to do research, they have to do it on their own. It is a sort of a gamble, and those who want to play it, they are like, I mean, they are putting their everything on the stake.
But any challenges you faced regarding labor supply, working capital? I mean, these are some of the things that we've been hearing a lot during COVID, or for that matter,
No, in
logistics.
case of during COVID time, no, because all our people were with us. We were the closely knit team of 50 people, and it is we don't need labor because it is all skilled manpower in life science industry. So all were with us. In fact, we were working day in and day out. So there was no problem of the liquidity or because government and all our customers, since the product was in huge demand, everybody was paying advance. So there is no there was no problem of liquidity during COVID. The problems which I suggested was before COVID period, pre-COVID period.
Right. So, Manoj, coming to you in terms of the challenges that have been so very much talked about, and we've really, do you really see a green shoot emerging in the economy? Do you see that things are, there are some positive outcomes on the horizon?
Yeah, first we need to understand that this is actually a medical problem which is now translated in being an economic problem both for countries and companies across the world. And one of the things that is eagerly being watched is there are 8 companies now which are in phase 2 critical trials, clinical trials. So that's been a moment over the last quarter. We hope some more progress over there because everybody really needs to watch out for the vaccine so that this infectious disease comes under control. Coming back to the economy and India, there are a few data points which have come out which clearly show the green shoots, especially post the unlocking. We can see that the exports, for example, June week 2 were almost 88 to 90% of what they were in June 2019. So the exporting community clearly seems to be getting back in action. Even the electricity consumption saw lower contraction in growth rates from a negative 24% in April to minus 6% in June, thereby indicating that more businesses are restarting their businesses and industries. Consumption of both petroleum products as well as the rail freight trade is looking up, which means that both on the rail and the road side, we are seeing movement of goods and services. Recently, credit card companies came out and gave their data, which spoke about almost they being at 85% of pre-COVID spends. Though the category of spends have changed from it being lifestyle and travel and tourism to now being more towards purchasing of laptops, desktops, and e-payments being made across essential and non-essential goods and services. So we are seeing some green shots over there. However, I think India is a story of two halves. The bright spot, frankly, is the rural economy. We are aware that almost the Kharif sowing season, over 40% increase in acreage of sowing this year vis-a-vis last year for the farmers. In conjunction with the normal monsoon, we expect the rural consumer to be having some more money in his pocket as we go along in the next few months. So for our MSMEs, which have customers in these rural areas, you should expect some pickup in demand in the next few months, given the normal monsoon as well as the Kharif sowing season coming through. Last but not the least, I would say that India currently has a reasonably large forex cover of almost $507 billion, gives us a sufficient cushion in terms of any adverse shocks. The currency slippage from 65, 67 levels to 75 rupees to a dollar actually helped exporters more as we've actually significantly reduced our import bill. So there again, we are more competitive externally. And I think at an overall level, we are starting to see more green shoots. As we continue this unlocking, I expect more come in, which show that things are moving in the right progress. Having said that, I think we should all appreciate the fact that this is a year where India is expected to contract its GDP anywhere between 5 to 7%. And the last time the GDP of India contracted was sometime in 1979, 1980. So, we do expect that the GDP will contract. But having said that, from the lows of March, April, and May, we are starting to see some good green shots in the economy.
Right, the green shoots in the economy, Meher, and the contraction. So, Sunil, how do you see that? Because for an economy to bounce back, and in particular, if you are talking about a credit cycle or the business cycle to come back on its track, there's a buoyancy that's needed. So, what, according to you, are some of the additional steps that are needed to help our MSMEs and the related ecosystem? Sunil, I would, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sunil, I think you're on mute. If you can just unmute yourself, please.
Thank you, Anish, for
Loud.
having me here. A lot of points have been made by the speakers, so I will not be repeating myself. The fact that COVID is here is certain. The fact that we do not have a vaccine is also certain. The fact that nobody knows when the vaccine will be introduced is also very certain. Now, given this uncertainty, what the government has done in the past, various steps, emergency credit line or the National Credit Guarantee Trust or the PF subscription or providing liquidity to the banks for on lending through the NBFCs to the MSMEs, etc. These are very good steps because the government can only be an enabler. Now, when a business, when there is a complete lockdown, obviously it disrupts the logistics, the labor, and it affects the liquidity. So there will be great uncertainty, and during this uncertainty, having fear or amongst bankers is also very natural. But as Meher mentioned, the rural economy has shown an uptick. Rural economy is going to bounce back, and it cannot continue forever. So it's probably going to be. We've seen a uptick in May because businesses are getting back to normal. People can't be contained in their homes forever. So this is going to come back. Now, when will it come back? Mayor mentioned a couple of companies have already come with the vaccine. We've also seen remdesivir and Mabiplu and various other things. My lab is also, has this testing equipment. But I would assume that the government is creating that situation. You see, creating tariff boundaries for imports from China. That is again a step directed towards MSMEs. Then, if you notice easily yesterday or today, they have announced a portal for MSMEs, which is called Udyam, where the IT and GST linkage would be there. Then you have PSB 59, where you can get your loan sanctioned by public sector banks in 59 minutes. Now, all this digitization or use of technology is actually getting more focused attention from the government. And the moment these are granularly attended to, obviously you'll have more action, more availability for the MSMEs. So I would say that the all MSMEs here now need to get formalized. And Udyam is a very welcome step because this will be expanded. It's not going to be restricted to IT and GST. But there are a whole lot of compliances which all these MSMEs at various stages need to do. But if they are digitized, they are formalized, getting credit and growing becomes much more easier.
So one of the points when we talk about formalizing any particular sector, data and digitalization play a very crucial role. And that's where, Naveen, my question is, as a bureau, data is a fuel. And one of the hypotheses or beliefs, which some of our panelists also alluded to, is that post-COVID, many of the old models may not really hold true. So we may need some forward-looking indicators as well, especially from a credit underwriting and collections perspective. What do you think is the way forward for something like, say, data and alternate data? Your views and take on that, the new world, the new order.
Thanks, Anish. Pleasure to be here on a Saturday afternoon. And very quickly, to your point, yes, data and digitalization. I think digitalization has been spoken about, and data is going to be crucial. There are basically two big challenges that I believe MSMEs are facing. First one is access to credit. Second is retaining their existing customer. I think digitalization, and as spoken by most of the panelists, is going to be key, right? One, to extend credit, and second, how these MSMEs, small business owners, are actually going to retain their customers. So obviously, digital payment was something which we spoke about. Now, coming to data specifically, underwriting has always been important, because when a lender is going to be providing credit, they would want to check a lot of things. So start with the credit bureau, where there is already existing payment history to the lender. So it is a credit, I think like a score that is created, which is easy to access. But in addition to that, to make it digitally available, like Sunil mentioned, in 59 minutes, it could be possibly even faster. You have GST data available today. You have ITR data, which is available today digitally. You have bank data, which is available digitally. You have the bureau data, which is available digitally. Meher spoke about payments. Now, a lot of our MSMEs are accepting payments online, which is again digital. Invoice data is now available digitally. We have alternate data like psychometric, which is available, metadata, which is available, application data. Now everything is digital. It is not physical because of the social distancing. Everything is being done digitally. Along with that, we have various applications where SDKs are embedded. So you have geolocation, for example, that is available. So if I see the new world is underwriting with bureau data and adding this alternate data to come up with a better scoring mechanism with instant decisions that can actually extend credit, because credit will help MSMEs which are contributing to a huge 30+% of the Indian GDP. We have 6.3 crores MSMEs, but not all of them have access to credit. And solving for credit with both the combination of data that the Bureau has, alternate data, and scoring models, which actually create this instant decision, I think is going to be the way of the future.
So I think on that note, I mean, this is a question both. I'll just quickly, one I'll throw it at Mehernosh and as well as Vikas. As lenders, do you really think that while this discussion has been on for a long time, that digitalization will help formalize a lot of MSMEs, but do you think post-COVID that's going to take a fast track? Is that going to be one of the big changes? Meher and Vikas, I'll come to Meher first and then Vikas. A quick view.
Yeah, I certainly think digitization will take a big fillip, and in the new world where you would want to have low touch, I think it's important to have high tech. And most of the banks, institutions, including us, are looking at ways, as Naveen rightly mentioned, both bureau as well as alternate data sources, because you no longer can only rely upon historical financial data of 3-year financials and audit reports to assess a customer, that what you would do pre-COVID. So I do believe that this is going to be a big change fundamentally. And I think the other thing which will come out is, as we go along, banks and institutions will want to do more analytics on their own base, look at their own customers first before they look at new and use data analytics very strongly to identify the better cohort of customers to lend.
Right. Vikas, what's your view? Is digitalization going to be more spearheaded now? It's going to get a...
Yeah, like I said, this transformation was already underway, and so this will get accelerated. So there are two perspectives here: the bank's perspective and the MSME's perspective. Right, from the bank's perspective, what does digitalization do? When I say bank, a bank or any financial institution, a lender, what does digitalization do? A, it speeds up the decision making for credit, and B, it improves the quality of decision from the bank's perspective. How does this translate to benefits to MSMEs? MSMEs can access quicker credit when they need it, and without much hassles through digitalization. That is one big benefit. The second is the fact that the bank is going to be now have the ability of making better credit decisions, which means it should be able to discriminate good credit from not so good credit. Therefore, the ones who have good credit are likely to get it at lower price points, and the ones who have at higher have a higher risk will get at higher price points, and they will still have access from the system, but there will be discrimination there, right? So these two clear benefits coming through for MSMEs themselves.
Now, which is where I will again go back to Shailendra. I know that the kind of work that your business models have been, you have not been impacted by the typical challenges that we read about the micro enterprises. Having said that, one would say that, yeah, look, you are from the pharma sector, healthcare sector, rather. And COVID is a healthcare crisis, and therefore it's been so easy for you. And we definitely know that it hasn't been an easy journey. If you could share your experience in terms of how did you meet the challenge of COVID? What are the things which enabled you to develop this rapid COVID test kits, etc.? how did you pivot your thing? Because we have so many of our MSME clients and colleagues out here on this panel. They would love to hear from you in terms of what they should take away for their respective businesses. You are on mute, Shailendra. Sorry, you got to unmute yourself, please.
Yeah. So, is it okay now?
Yes, please go ahead.
So the thing is, although the COVID is a healthcare challenge or a healthcare opportunity, however you see it, but it is not a completely true thing. COVID is opportunity for those who were flexible. That simply means the companies who were making bandages and all, they started making PPE kits. So it is about the flexibility which you show during this particular time. It cannot be an opportunity for a company who has a strict set of production lines and something. That means the company which is making, say, something which is required for a drug which is like paracetamol and all. This kind of painkiller sale and all that has come down, whereas the sales of other few drugs and the surgical instruments, the sanitizers, that has come up. So I know the companies who were in breweries, actually, they have sold their ethanol to make sanitizers. So it is about the flexibility, and journey is not so simple. I mean, it is not easy to cope up to the demand. This is a very scientific field wherein you need lot many approvals, you need lot many regulatory things to be taken care of, and in that particular framework you have to be flexible. So to be very frank, this particular journey is about the flexibility, about the teamwork, and about understanding the customer demand, and rather than the situation which has arisen out of the COVID virus.
But what really gives flexibility? If you can just share 2-3 advisories, what really enabled you to be flexible, and is there something else which one can take away?
One is the inheritance of the research and development. Basically, what happens in our industry, our MSME sector, what I have seen in our industry as well as in few other industries also, people try to keep their production very slim. I mean, they don't venture into other areas. They just keep on track of their particular thin line of their production demands as per the customer need. There is no a framework of R&D which is done, and it is often seen as not so required. We are just imitating others, basically. So if you have this kind of setup, you are not going to get the benefit of the opportunities, and you are it will be a challenge for you.
Right.
For us and for very few companies, it is the research and development which we inherited which helped us. So that is the thing which has differentiated few companies and from other few.
Yeah, so important that how you design your business models, and therefore that stands the test of the time. So Sunil, that's what brings me back to you, because with COVID we are hearing so much about conservatism and how do you manage efficiencies. If you talk, what would your advice be to MSMEs, and for that matter for the ecosystem, from a policy perspective as well as from a management perspective, with your experience, what do you think are those few things that should be focused upon in the new world?
So when the Prime Minister mentioned Atmanirbhar Bharat, on a lighter note, the message that is to the MSMEs is खुदी को कर बुलंद इतना कि हर तदबीर से पहले खुदा बंदे से खुद पूछे बता तेरी रजा क्या है. And taking a cue from what Shailendra has done, let us accept the fact that the future is going to be very volatile. And this volatility will require a lot of agility on the part of our entrepreneurs, which means that processes have to be very flexible, whether you do R&D, whether you do manufacturing or services or whatever trade. Now, if you are looking at 1.37 billion people, we are 1/6 of the world's population, obviously we'll be consuming. And we are going to be manufacturing here. Somebody will have to come with the product and somebody will have to come with the components. Obviously, the guy who's going to come with the product is not going to be manufacturing all the components himself. So if your processes are sound, your chances of manufacturing and shifting your components, I'm just taking an example, becomes that much more easier. So I think what is most important is, the agility which our MSMEs have shown in the last 3 months is phenomenal. We have the bright people, we have the entrepreneurs, we have the enabling situation. In fact, you just the opportunities before the entire MSME space in this country is going to explode. Whether you take the APMC Act, which has been changed, or the Essential Commodities Act, or the logistics change, across manufacturing and services, there'll be a lot of opportunities. So I guess MSMEs will also need to think ahead. And in that, I am taking a cue from what Rajesh mentioned, that the customer engagement at Edelweiss has been phenomenal. That is where MSMEs can also take the benefit of experienced people in Edelweiss to actually handhold them into their future, streamline their processes, and get into more efficiencies. So that's the message I'd like to give.
I think that's very beautifully put. So, Meher, what is your viewpoint here? What would your advice be to the MSMEs in terms of the new outlook, in terms of orienting?
I think 4 or 5 things which I would and draw on what even our other colleagues have said. Clearly, we need to be very customer centric. The MSMEs will need to be very closely entrenched with their set of customers. They give them the profits, they give them the reason to be. And in this times, please stay very close to your set of customers. Business models will change. Everybody has alluded to that. And for many of our MSMEs who actually reach out to large corporates, they will be actually forced to look at digitization, technology, and other things as the corporates look to further consolidate their set of customers. So you will need to be open towards change and business model, because even the customer behavior will change. So if that changes, you will need to change your behavior. I think third most important thing in this time is to be frugal. Cash is king. So whatever we do, ensure that you spend the money only if it's towards servicing an existing customer or it's towards getting a new client coming in. Fourth point is towards financial fitness, very similar to what we do today, whether we walk, we talk, or we do yoga and meditation. The same way I would encourage MSMEs to also look at financial fitness for their companies. Please ensure that you sit closely with your chartered accountants, your consultants, whoever is advising you on the financial side. Understand very closely how we need to improve our performance, ensure that you have high productivity from your teams as we go along, because this is one area which has normally been outsourced by MSMEs. In the current day and age, I would advise that that is not done, and you sit together and understand that. Last but not the least, I would say that consciously look to deleverage. It is very important in the current environment not to sort of over the last 10-11 years, MSMEs have actually borrowed a lot of money for growth capital, and nothing wrong with it. The CAGR growth of all these MSMEs has been about 17-18%. You need capital to grow. The current environment where demand is going to be slightly muted, it is important to review your debt obligations. It's important to see how you can extinguish some of these debt obligations or elongate the payments so that your cash flows are in line with the new normal in terms of the revenues that you earn. I think these are 4 or 5 things that I would like to share with our MSMEs as we go along. Thank you.
Right, Meher. I think that's very aptly put, and I think very important takeaways for our MSMEs there. Naveen, you did allude to digitalization. You did talk about the informal sector becoming formal. But the question that I have of you is, the studies show that only 30% odd MSMEs have a digital approach. And given the fact that so many of them are in the informal sector, and on the other hand, we had Sunil talking about MSMEs should try to get more formalized. How do you meet this dichotomy? Do you see a midway out where our small and micro enterprises, the guys on the streets, the smallest of businesses, do you see them also thriving in the same manner?
I think it's a very good question, Anish. If you look at the landscape, like you very rightly said, there is the formal sector, which are getting access to credit, and there's informal. We have to keep a mind on there is an invisible sector also. So the formal sector is the business entity getting credit. Then there is an entrepreneur who is taking it on his name, getting credit. and then comes the informal sector. Now, for this informal sector, I think the first thing, the new normal is going to be all of us have to be digital. I'll give you an example. During COVID period, I think all of us at home are now being self-reliant, maybe even for dishwashing. So I wanted to put a dishwasher, and I needed somebody to come and get my electrical work done, my plumbing work done. This person who I connected with was in Borivali in Mumbai. Now, for him to come over here, collect money from me, then go and buy the stuff because he didn't have access to credit. He's in the informal sector. What I did was I asked him, do you accept a payment either through a wallet or through UPI? And he had already moved towards that. So I sent him the money in advance. He collected that goods and the switch points and the plumbing requirements, and he came home, he got everything done. Now, all of a sudden, he is getting money which is going to his bank account or to a wallet. Now, that is something that he can show digitally. So that itself helps the informal sector to show the amount of money that they are actually making. Along with this, the cheaper digital cost. Now, almost everybody has internet on their phone because India is one of the cheapest with data costs. Our smartphones are very, very low cost in India. So they are now moving into a digital environment.
Right.
Also, the government is doing its 2-bit, maybe with video KYC or looking at a 10,000 rupees loan there, and I think bureau coming together. So that's what's happening together.
Right. I think that's very pertinent, and perhaps therefore, even if you're not fully formalized, you can still coexist in this whole world. Now we are already past time, all of you on the webinar, but it's been so riveting. I can tell you we are flooded with audience questions. We've got hundreds of them I can see which have been put up, but we can't really get into each of them. The broad theme, some of them have already been covered, but we would definitely try to see post-event if we can, somehow put out some messages from our panelists on that. But it's a quick wrap. I'll just go around the table, the virtual e-table, and one question each, one word, one line of advice for the MSMEs from each of you. In a nutshell, what is that one thing that our MSME colleagues, friends should take away from and implement it tomorrow? One thing, one piece of advice. I'll start with Vikas.
If I have to give only one piece of advice, Anish, then I will go back to my mountaineering experience. As a mountaineer, we say that the mountain cannot become stronger or taller. Only you can become stronger. So if you want to scale the mountain, if you can't scale it in one go, you keep trying hard, keep building your resources, keep strengthening your infrastructure so that you can climb it one day.
Wonderful. Yeah. Thank you. What about Sunil?
Yes, one phrase, okay. Revive and research, pivot for the future. The future is going to be extremely bright.
Okay, that's a very optimistic note. Shailendra, you echo that? Sales doubling?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do echo this, as well as I have one more sentence, that is practice the change.
Sorry, just elaborate on that. What do you mean by that?
Practice the change, because see, this is virus, and why people often say that this particular epidemic is a viral epidemic, but the viral epidemic is not a health epidemic. It is basically a social challenge. Virus, basically it affects you or your society, not because it is affecting your body, but it affects you as a society.
Right.
So lot is going to be changed, and one has to practice that change now. Nobody can predict. If somebody says that this will be the situation tomorrow or that will be the situation tomorrow, he is actually not really giving you the facts. The fact is nobody knows what is going to happen tomorrow. Right. You just have to practice this change. Wonderful. You have to have your mindset like that.
Wonderful. Manoj, what about you?
Yeah, I think build liquidity in these uncertain times. be very customer focused are the two things that I would like to share with our MSMEs, and be open to change. There will be more opportunities which will be coming. Be open to change.
Right. Naveen.
I would say think digital. I think you need to be digital either while accessing credit or giving your customers to pay you. You have to be digital first.
Right, right. Now, there are a lot of audience questions. I'll just put one or two out here. I'm sorry, I can't leave without that, though we are out of time. We have also got our good keynote speaker coming in to share his insights on the wrap up. But one or two things is, how far are we out of the woods? If I have to just do a quick survey on a scale of 10 or maybe on a month, when do you think things will be better off? Put a month around the table. Mernosh, I'll start with you.
41% of our customers say they need 3 months to come out of the woods. So I'll go with our customers.
Ever the customer-centric person. Vikas, what about you?
I think another 3 quarters to go.
Another 3 quarters, Sunil?
I'd give 4 out of 10 for the present state, and I would say by December we'll be, near to normal actually.
Okay, that's wonderful. Naveen?
I would go with Sunil. November, December, back to pre-COVID days.
Wonderful. Shailendra? You're already in pre-COVID, post-COVID.
See, virus is going to be with us, so we should not worry that. And about the economy and social structure, I believe next quarter we will be back on the track by the end of the next quarter.
Wonderful. So I think the consensus is 3 to 6 months is when things should start looking much brighter. But there's a view of 3 quarters as well. So thank you so much, panelists. But before I wrap up, there is a very interesting segment. We have our speaker coming in who will share with us his insights. He's none other than Deepak Mittal. Deepak is the MD and CEO of credit businesses of Edelweiss Group. He comes with over 2 decades of experience across a wide gamut of financial services. He's a chemical engineer from ITBHU and an alumnus of IIM Ahmedabad. And he's a maverick and known for building successful businesses. So I would request Deepak to actually share his roundup insights on this particular agenda of the blueprint for the MSMEs. Over to you, Deepak.
Thank you, Anish. Thanks all the panelists and speakers. It's been wonderful listening to you. And thanks for all the audience who have joined us, our own team members, our clients. And it's been a very engaging session. I hope you also found it very engaging and useful. I've learned quite a few new things, and I was making notes for myself as I was speaking. I think you've heard a lot from the experts and their point of views. I would like to bring a slightly different perspective. And I talk to a lot of businessmen, small shopkeepers to a lot of SME businessmen. And I just wanted to share 1 or 2 anecdotes. And I think that is where maybe we can connect the dots from what we have heard from our speakers and what some of them have been saying and how it can actually impact our own businesses. And the first one I would like to share is a small grocer. He supplies close by. He supplies to 4 or 5 large buildings. 80% of his customers effectively come from these buildings. And I was chatting with him, and I keep chatting with him once a month or maybe sometimes twice a month. And it's interesting to see how his constraints have shifted. Initially he was running short of supply because some of the demand patterns had shifted and some of the supply side constraint. And he said that got over in 2 to 3 weeks. Pretty much mid-April and end April, most of the supply side constraints were by and large not there. He was able to get what he needed for his customers. But he said supplying to my customers became a challenge because all of them wanted home delivery. Nobody wanted to come to the shop. And delivering these orders on time. And with all the rules and restrictions in the building, 1 order delivery was taking 2 to 3 hours, and he had only 2 delivery persons. And he was saying my sales were low not because of demand or supply, but my ability to manage deliveries. And soon he found a very simple solution. He has just now put for these 4 buildings delivery hours twice a day. So one building is 11 and 4, another is 12 and 5, and so on. He aggregates all his demand because his constraint clearly is delivery, and he has been able to work around his constraint. He aggregates all these orders. I think the point which a lot of panelists made, digital payments has become his, main source. He doesn't have to now extend credit also, which, comes to Mernosh's points of fiscal discipline or financial discipline. And he's now rearing, and he claims he's now selling much more than what he was selling earlier. while a lot of us will talk about reimagining your business, reinventing your business, I think it's worthwhile looking at your business and seeing what needs reinvention. In some cases, like in this case, it was a very, very small tweak and very commonsensical, but in a sense, he has reinvented or reimagined his business, because without that tweak, he would have been maybe at 30-40% of his sales. Now he's very close to 100% of his sales. I think there are other examples of aggregating demand. I think all of us are seeing it around us. A lot of B2B is now moving from B2B to B2C. A classic example, there's a mid-sized courier company specializes in a lot of local trade couriers, typically couriers from wholesale to retail. When I say wholesale to retail, the large distributors and stockists, and he supplies to the retailers. Again, going through massive challenges in this period initially. And he very quickly flipped his model. From wholesaler to retailers, he actually created a delivery mechanism from retailers to their end customers. He was hyper local, so he could deliver things, from one part of Bombay to another part of Bombay in 1 to 2 hours. And I was chatting with him, and I said, "What are the things which you're seeing moving?" And he said, Zoom classes are all over, and people need material for classes, whether it's school textbooks which have been left in school, and while teachers are teaching on Zoom, there are 3 books missing with the child. He can order it from the store. I pick it up from the store and I deliver it to him. People are taking music lessons. They need books on music. I pick it up from Furtado's or wherever, and I deliver it to them. And multitudes, including specialty stuff from stores which are open but are not necessarily able to deliver. And if you remember, in the first 2 months, there was a lot of restrictions even on things like Zomato and Swiggy not delivering in so-called zones, some containment zones, and their delivery being extremely erratic. And he has just latched on and created a beautiful B2C, service from B2B to B2C. Is a big shift, and he has managed it during the COVID era. And if he comes out strong, I think he would have created a lot of value for his business. So I think each one of us needs to look at our businesses, our business models, and see where the tweak is required. Sometimes you will need to, tweak your product services, like, bandages companies moving to PPE kits. And some of them might actually be much smaller tweaks. It could just be getting your delivery mechanisms right. A lot of aggregated orders, if you can see the payments coming to you, they come from multiple Paytm accounts or Google Pay accounts with a mobile number. They are now your customers. You can reach out to them, market, would you be interested in a refill order? You can WhatsApp it. How do you aggregate demand? And you're seeing a lot of specialty deliveries are now moving from B2B to B2C very quickly. Of course, it means arranging for the logistics and everything, but it's a huge value addition if it carries on like this manner. One can't underscore more the digital enablement required, especially on the payment side, but even in terms of your ability to interact with your customers. If you are on a Google map, how quickly do you respond if somebody puts a query? Is the status that you are open or not open correct on Google map? Because people currently are using Google searches or any kind of online search before they venture out, because I don't want to go to a store and find that store is not open. Do you support your customers through WhatsApp chats at a small business level, especially on the retail side or on B2B side? It's much easier. Delivery people are actually even sending photographs of things before they deliver to you, so that if there is any mismatch, they would rather not send it rather than collect back, and even those errors can be reduced. So I actually share the optimism with some of my colleagues. I think we will be back to normal far sooner. I think each one of us needs to look at our business, our supply points, our delivery points, and our customers. Make some small tweaks. In most of the cases, the tweaks would be small and not necessarily very large. We may use words like reimagining, reinventing, but I've always felt when I hear of SME as a word, there are 2 sets of thoughts which come to one's mind. One are around constraints, being less resourced, and another is about being more flexible, more adaptive, and quick to move, nimble. This is the time to be nimble and quick to move, and I think SMEs will have a huge advantage over large enterprises, because the speed with which we shift will decide our destiny. I shared the optimism, as I said. We will learn to live with COVID, and we will figure out a way of living with COVID. While COVID is not going to go away, I think we will all become much better at dealing with it. And in this entire environment of unlock, one word of advice: make sure we are using the safety processes. They are not necessarily very strong or very causing a lot of hindrance with your businesses, but just some amount of social distancing, wearing mask, washing your hands frequently. I think they go a long way in making sure people will stay safer. And just take care, be safe, and use this opportunity to reinvent yourself. This is a great time to get connected with your customers much better than what it was there in the pre-COVID time. Make the best of this opportunity. Thanks. That's all from my side.
Deepak, I think you summed it up so well. And again, very, very beautiful perspectives on how you look at things. And I think with ladies and gentlemen, with this, we are almost getting to the close of our panel. But I can't thank you enough. I think there's been such an overwhelming response from each of you. There have been so many questions. I hope many of them have been covered directly or indirectly in the way our speakers and panelists have answered. But I must also thank each of our panelists. I think when I started this whole webinar, I mentioned that the idea is to go back with a few blueprints. And if I may just put everything together in a nutshell, though there's such variety of opinions, the thing is very clear that change is here to stay. It's a new world order. The question is, it's not just the hardware of the business, but also the software of the business, the culture, the flexibility, the adaptation to change, which will determine our future. The fundamentals remain the same. Nothing has changed, be it customer centricity, be it the focus on digital and data, as Deepak just mentioned about. Everything doesn't need reimagination. It's only those few important aspects which can pivot our businesses. So the fundamentals remain the same, but at the same time, one has to be very prudent and focused. I think that, and of course, we had a lot of other specific pointers coming in terms of management principles and examples. It is not just a story of optimism. Let me tell you, internet, as we see it in India, started coming to mainstream in only 2000s, but it actually started operating in the 1960s. The social media, a lot of tools like AI, blockchain that we are talking about had their origins in 1970s, 80s. It takes 2, 3, 4 decades, and then there's an inflection point which brings a lot of things mainstream. What we are seeing as crisis today, my hope, and all the panelists, if I can speak on their behalf, is the hope that many of the things that we have been trying to do in our economy, in our businesses, will perhaps get accelerated. The age-old saying, necessity is the mother of all, evil is the mother of all inventions, right? So perhaps we will have something very, very interesting created in the days to come. So with that, I thank each of you for your precious time on the Saturday afternoon. I thank all of you in the audience, and I wish you all the best. Have a very safe time, have a very prosperous time ahead as we fight this together. Thank you from Edelweiss. Jai Hind.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anish.
Thank you, Anish.
Thanks, everyone.